I was going to ask you if you're surprised by the timing of this. I don't think any of us are actually surprised by the fact that he has departed, but perhaps the FAI acted a little bit sooner than we expected.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Usually after a campaign, you let it digest, you let it settle for a week or two, and then you can make your decision going into or approaching the Christmas time. So yeah, it's happened quicker than probably I'd imagine, but that suggests that this has been on the cards for the last couple of weeks. Maybe the negativity going into the Northern Ireland game after the Nations League defeat to Wales, and of course that really poor performance against Denmark at home. I think that's probably speeded things up. I think that's probably why it has happened. So as I said, this has been on the cards for a number of weeks, certainly within the FAI. That's what it suggests to me, I suppose, yeah.
Do you think there's one performance that really stuck out to the FAI and they decided they had to act? Luke there mentions the poor performance at Northern Ireland the other day, or the poor attendance, I should say, and the poor performance at the Aviva Stadium the other day, which forced the FAI to act.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see that poor attendance against Northern Ireland as being a major factor. Personally, that's the way that I would think. We've all sat here over the course of the time, certainly with Off the Ball, and we've analysed the games. This has not been over the last 2 or 3 games. This has not been a poor attendance against Northern Ireland that's influenced the FAI's decision. This has been a slow decline since Euro 2016. That's the way that it's been. I think we had it the other night. I think we've played 18 games. I think it is. That's right. Certainly in the last 18 games anyway, since 2016, we've only won 2 games. We've only scored 2 goals. Sorry, we've only scored 2 goals only once in that 18 games. That says it all to me. I think really we're not creating. We're not having chances in matches. I looked at it over the last couple of days about the amount of chances we've created across the course of the Nations League, and we're simply not creating any chances. That's the thing that's alarming. It's in our faces. We can all see it. The performances haven't been good enough, and we're not necessarily saying against some of the better sides, where we understand fully as football supporters that we're watching a side that's playing against much better opposition, much better players. We might need to play a certain style. We're playing the same style against Northern Ireland. We know the performance against them. Denmark, who I simply am not having that they are 5 goals better than us or 4 goals better than us when they beat us last year. I don't think they're a great side, and I'll stand by that. And that's been proved in the last few games we've played against them. They're not a great side, and yet we're making them look like a very, very good side or a top world side, and they simply aren't that.
Dan McDonell of the Irish Independent also joins us on the line this afternoon. Dan, how are things?
How are things, lads?
This was fairly telegraphed from this morning, I dare say, and then the FAI suddenly acted this afternoon. Talk to us about the decision that the FAI made and sort of the financial implications of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's to be decided, I suppose, or maybe to come out in due course what sort of settlement was reached. I mean, there was a bit of chat in Denmark. I mean, some of it was effectively pub talk, that maybe there was word going around that change was coming, but at the same time, you're trying to counter that against some of the, I suppose, the statements that had been made previously from Martin O'Neill and maybe even from the FAI around the start of the year with the Stoke thing, which suggested that they had their man and they were sticking with him. So it's still a bit of a surprise, I have to say. I mean, I sort of heard Darren there make a reference to the FAI taking assertive action and how that might be a sort of a construed as a positive, but unfortunately, we've been down this road before where they've taken assertive, action to correct mistakes that they've made, which were flagged and highlighted very clearly at the time, which would have presented difficulty down the tracks. And we'll see what the cost to Irish football is. I can't imagine Martin O'Neill would have left for free, put it like that. So, the decision to, I suppose, extend the deal last year around the time of the Stoke thing, it just reminds me a lot of the Giovanni Trapattoni's campaign too far, except this time he didn't necessarily get to go through the full campaign, but that generally makes the cost of letting someone go that bit more substantial.
You've been on the beat for the entire duration of his reign. You were at pretty much every press conference. How has the mood of Martin O'Neill changed throughout the years? Was there a certain point when you realised, okay, things have clearly soured here, the criticism is clearly starting to get to him and the performances aren't really warranting his inclusion as Ireland manager for much longer?
I'm not even sure if the tone even dramatically changed, because within his first campaign, and he did make this point on Monday evening in Denmark, which turned out to be his last sort of press conference as Ireland manager, a little huddle with the newspapers afterwards, where I think that the question was put to him, would you have a message to your critics? You know, people who have been criticising the team, you know, in the recent times over the past year. And O'Neill quivered a small bit, and he said, well, I've actually had criticism for all of my time here. There's been a continuity with that, going back to the draw with Scotland in June 2015. And that was the thing, that even when Ireland qualified for the Euros, even on the good days, you know, the really good days, you know, the Bosnia game and the Germany game, and even within the Euros itself, there was a sort of a defiance from O'Neill that he'd shut people up at that point. So really, you know, that sort of chippiness had been there throughout. So I'm not saying that there's been a dramatic change at any point where you go, well, this is it. I think, you know, after Denmark, it was obviously particularly grim. After the 5-1, there was a conscious attempt during the summer by O'Neill, I think the FAI, to try and improve public image and relations, and, you know, one-on-one interviews with every newspaper, and, you know, an attempt to say, okay, things were a bit tense before, but let's be positive about the future here. And yes, then the games happened, and, you know, the games made it harder to keep up that facade. And sure enough, by Monday we were back to where we were last year, and that was the thing. We were just stuck in this cycle. And even as Luke said it there, who would have been, you know, a sort of firm supporter of Martin's, I think it's fair to say, I'm not representing Luke's position, that even from people on that side of things, there was a sense that this fatigue has just worn everyone down.
Kev, Mick McCarthy has been installed immediately as odds-on favourite to become the next Republic of Ireland manager. I wonder, is it a nostalgia appointment that has been suggested by Nathan earlier on in the show, or I wonder, is this the correct appointment?
Well, Mick McCarthy's very, very good. That's the way that I would see it. Now, who is he going to bring in his backroom team if he were to be appointed? I think it would be a great appointment if he were to introduce a Robbie Keane or someone like that, of that ilk, a Lee Carsley. Personally, I would love Lee Carsley to be involved. You know, I think if we're serious about coaching our younger players, I think we have to get the best Irish player that we have got available, or certainly one of the best, and he is considered one of the best that's coaching within the system over in England right now. And I would like to go with him, whether that be on the 21 level, or maybe being that link between senior international level and youth football under 21 level. I could see a role for him in that one, yeah.
Totally agree. Would Carsley actually go for it, though, is the only thing? Would it actually, in a weird way, be a step down, unless one day, if he became Republic of Ireland manager, I don't think that'd be a step down, but say an assistant role or an underage role from his really lucrative job and really successful job he's doing at Manchester City?
Well, no, Lee's with the English FA now.
The English FA, sorry. He's left, but when did he leave Manchester City last year?
He did leave Manchester City, yeah. No, I don't know if he would go for it. But no, the problem being, Owen, is this, though. Whether he wants the job or not, right? If he turns the job down, but if we are serious about where we're going with our structures within the FAI, within our football system, why don't we go and get the best? We've constantly spoken about the best coaches, the people that we need involved within our structures. Why not go and get the best? And he is the best. He is simply the best. He's considered one within the structure over within the UK as one of the very best. We've got a player that's got an inside track on what the FA are doing, which would be great for us, I think. I think he could bring that to the FAI, that we could actually help develop our structures going forward as well. I don't think it'd be a bad thing at all. In relation to Mick McCarthy, I think it'd be a good appointment. I think Stephen Kenny would be a good appointment. But the one thing that Stephen Kenny, and I've heard you talking about it earlier, and the one thing that Stephen Kenny, it's not been spoken about, he would have to prove himself to the players. I mean, and as bad as that sounds, is that I've heard you lads talking about, let's get League of Ireland players involved, and I've heard maybe calls coming in and things like this as well, that the step up from League of Ireland to international football is too great. And we've seen it from lads that have gone over to play over in England in recent years. The best players in the League of Ireland over the last 4 or 5 years have invariably gone over to play in England, and they haven't necessarily been a success. I'm not saying that they won't be a success and they don't have the ability to play international football, but the step up from League of Ireland to international football is too big a gulf. It's too big a jump in my mind. For Stephen Kenny going in there, he would still have to prove himself to the players. He's on an even keel, coaching-wise, with Michael O'Neill, with what he's done with Northern Ireland. I think you're going in. Michael O'Neill has proved himself. Initially, he wasn't getting the results with Northern Ireland, but he transformed the whole system, and he started to get the results. Then he started to get performances out of the players. I've watched Northern Ireland through this campaign. You look at it on paper, you'll think they've lost every game, but I tell you what, now they have played brilliantly in every single game I've seen them, and they're actually enjoyable to watch. That can't be said against us. We're not winning games, and we're totally Well, we're poor to watch. That's the way that I would see it. We've not been playing any good football anyway at all. I don't see any sort of style, any sort of pattern that we've got. We say, heard you like talking about a direct style. I wouldn't mind playing a direct style if we're actually doing that. But we're not even playing a direct style. We've got no style about us. We've got no method to how we're going out and playing. That's the thing that I'm looking at. So if Stephen Kenny were to take the job, I think he'd have to go in immediately and make an impression on the players on the training ground straight away.
Kev, O'Neill has kind of made the point over the last year, and he's probably laboured it a bit, that the resource and the players at his disposal don't match the expectation of the Irish soccer public. Does he have a point in saying that? Is he right?
No, our players are underachieving. Look at the players that we've got, and we referenced it in relation to Northern Ireland the other night. I looked at the two sets of players the other night against Northern Ireland, and we have got better players than Northern Ireland, yet they outplayed us for the whole game. We played a style that was conservative, well, to say the least. It wasn't even if we're playing a containment role with a view to actually go and counter attack that style. We didn't do that. So yes, I think Northern Ireland aren't as good a side of us. Yet they actually played us off the pitch and made us look totally inadequate. So I think our players are underachieving. I think we have to be realistic that we probably don't have the players that we maybe had 20, 30 years ago. I think we know that, but our players still aren't playing to the level that they're capable of playing.
Dan, just get your thoughts on that, what Kev said a few moments ago about a potential next Ireland manager or the potential next Irish management ticket. It's interesting that the likes of Lee Carsley and Robbie Keane are mentioned there by Kev. It's a realistic possibility. It's been mentioned over the last couple of weeks, particularly in Robbie Keane's case, and reading between the lines in some of the reports, I think you've had a few stories on it. It seems that he's very interested in it himself, to be involved at some level with the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah, I think, I suppose, what is the next step for Robbie Keane now? I mean, I know he was obviously keeping fit and after a stint in India, and there was a suggestion he was going to maybe try and keep playing as such, but certainly in the context of the under-21 job he was being mentioned. Now I don't think really or certainly I was never sort of getting the belief or the vibe that he would be the manager of the 21 side, that he could be working as part of an under-21 setup, maybe alongside someone else. And maybe now it's a situation where this just translates to the senior job, and that someone like Robbie is available, he's in the area, he wants to go down that route of coaching and management, and he would have a good relationship with someone like Mick McCarthy. So I can see how that debate happens, and I can see how that argument is raised about Lee Carsley too. And as Kev mentions, he's someone who's really well thought of. And I guess we need to figure out, what the FAI wants now. I mean, there's two strands to this sort of succession race here, because on one hand you have Euro 2020, like Ireland's next games. I think regardless of what happens, I think with the draw and what size group we're in, like in March, Ireland are going to have competitive games, to try and get to a tournament that they really need to qualify for. And the way the draw rolls, you could suddenly be playing a top seed or a big game, and do you want someone learning on the job in that game, or do you want to try and trust it? Now, see, the point about Stephen Kenny, I think Stephen Kenny is well capable of managing Ireland, and I think he'd be a really progressive appointment. But I think Kev does make a good point with regard to, say, Michael O'Neill. That Michael O'Neill was given the time of a difficult campaign, effectively, at first with Northern Ireland, to bet into the job. And Stephen Kenny, I think, can be Ireland manager. I've no doubt about that. But the argument is, has the last year been wasted when that could have been the opportunity to get someone in who maybe needs to get, to build a bit of a relationship or rapport with players that might know, in some cases, wouldn't know a huge amount about him, although I still think Seamus Coleman and James McLean and some of the leading voices in the Irish dressing room, know what he's all about already. But this is the frustration that maybe a year has been completely wasted here, that could have got a longer term appointment in place, and maybe now you might see a quicker fix because of what went before.
And the thing about that idea of familiarity with Stephen Kenny, because there is an argument there that perhaps the players wouldn't have the respect for Stephen Kenny, who'd been over in England for a long time. I don't know who he is. But then conversely, you look at the unbelievably high respect I'm sure they had for Martin O'Neill, and a lot of them definitely would have had for their hero, really, in Roy Keane. And look where that's got us. So maybe the time for the sort of hero symbol in the dressing room is over, and players, we need to treat them with a bit more respect than that they're actually knowledgeable people, and they'll treat each coach on their merits as a coach.
Yeah, like I mean, this is it. I mean, I know, Kev would have spoken about this, and various people on the show over the last while have said that players will ultimately judge a guy by his first couple of training sessions or the impression that he makes, and your reputation will count for so long. And clearly, with Roy Keane, anyway, in particular, I mean, we've heard the WhatsApp message, we've heard the tone, the novelty of Roy Keane being around. The hero, the idol for a lot of Irish lads of a generation, that had faded dramatically. And yeah, I think, players will come to judge someone by the quality of their work. But, when you have sort of a manager who is a very different way of doing things, you sometimes probably need that training camp, those friendlies, that opportunity to bring in a philosophy. I mean, it's possible that Ireland's next competitive game could come off the back of like 3 days preparation if it's a Thursday, so and it's a pressurised campaign here. So this is why perhaps the appointment, there could be the right appointment, and I said, someone like Kenny, it could be complicated by the timing of how this has been handled and how the FBI, really wanted Martin O'Neill in January and decided they didn't want him now, when they probably knew in January the style that they were going to get for the period that followed. You commit to a year of transition, then you probably want the manager in charge that's going to be there for that period of transition. And what we've had is just a wasted year that might lead them into an appointment that may not be the best one.
Dan McDonell, thanks a million for your time.
Thanks.
You can read Dan's work in the Irish Independent tomorrow morning. Kev, just another point I wanted to put to you on that. Now that the FAI are in full recruitment mode, how wide should they cast the net? Should they interview more people than they actually feel are realistic candidates for the senior job? Because they might stumble upon a gem, they might find somebody who could fulfil a role at underage ranks or something like that. I'm talking former players. I'm saying that this is an opportunity now for the FAI to go out there and speak to people and invite people in. And if they're crap and if they've got no potential whatsoever as coaches, then so be it. It's only a waste of a little bit of time. But really now is an opportunity for the FAI to go out there and cast the net quite wide, I feel.
Oh, and let's be fair, we've got enough candidates. We have enough people that are very good coaches, first of all, very good managers that have managed at certain levels as well. So you can spread the net as wide as you want. That's the thing. You can cast it as far as you want. But the simple fact is, it will probably still be coming back to the same old names over the next 2 or 3 months, or however long it's going to take before 2 or 3 weeks, however long it's going to take for the appointment to be made. There's so many different points on it, so many different facets on this one, and how we're going to do it. And Dan made the perfect point there before as well on it's whoever's going to come in, what we're going to do, we're going to give them time. The Michael O'Neill issue is the perfect one, really. Are we going to say, well, look, we're never going to be in a position where we're going to say we're going to write off a campaign, we're going to write off 2 campaigns, we're going to build over the next 4 years towards something that might be very special going forward. But pinning my dog there on.
What's Maguire thinking? What's Maguire's thoughts on Martin O'Neill's departure?
Let's leave Maguire. We won't talk. We won't say what Maguire's thinking at the moment in time. We'll leave that one anyway. I think we have to. Due diligence has to take course. I think we've got to see who we are going to. We've got to interview all possible candidates. I've heard Sam Allardyce mentioned. I've heard many names mentioned within this. Why not go and interview them? Why not go and see? Why not go? I need to take him off there. Why not go and see what these guys have got to say? Why not go and listen to what they've got to say? How they're going to implement a style of play? Because we simply haven't had a style of play. As I was saying before, we haven't. Mick McCarthy, I think, would be an excellent appointment personally. I think Stephen Kenny would be an excellent appointment. I think Sam Allardyce would be an excellent appointment. Again, it wouldn't necessarily go down in some quarters, but at least we'd have a structure in place and we'd have a strong manager in place who would be able to implement a style and would then try to filter through and try to get a style that's being implemented across the whole system. Because I think that's what the senior international manager's job responsibility is. So it has been dark days for our football, but hopefully we've got people in place, or we will get people in place to try and implement a structure going forward for us now that's going to be positive.
Yeah, I understand you're back in the studio with us tonight. Yourself and Brian Kerr are giving your takes in full tonight on who should become the next Republic of Ireland manager. Kevin Kilbane, thanks a million.